if I've yeah, anyway, let's get cracking. Good morning, everybody. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Michael Grant, and I'm chair of the PTI National Tech and Law for Good board. Thanks ever so much for taking the time to join us this morning. I know you're all incredibly busy, so what I'll do is try and make my best effort.
Ooh. We've lost you, Michael. Michael? Michael? No, Michael. We've lost Michael.
I don't think he can hear you, Dan.
No, I don't think he can. It's typical, isn't it? We have endless conversations, and the one morning we really need him there, his internet connection has died. Right then, I will, in the interest of just carrying on, I will just carry on. So we'll come back to Michael. What we were going to do this morning is Michael was going to open, and then I was going to just talk a little bit about PTI, and then I was going to introduce to Ken, and then we'll go back to Michael. So from my part, I mean, I've spoken to all of you, I think, over the course of time, and I'm really grateful for the time that you've given me. You know, PTI has been a rapidly evolving process over the last 18 months really now, since January, when we did the launch dinner at the Rosewood. It's been an amazing time. We've put in a huge amount of impact groups that are now working on projects and programs, and that's all amazing. And I think we've been publishing that, and you can see more about that on the website. I think the points I really wanted to make this morning are, just to be clear, PTI, positive transformation, everything we're doing, it's all about a mindset. It's not a business, it's not a thing, it's a mindset, and it's all about cross-organizational positive change. It's about having no boundaries, it's about having no ego, be it personal or be it brand. It's just all about, there are things that need to be done. There needs to be a mechanism and an infrastructure put in place to do it. And frankly, you know, I believe that we all have a responsibility to that. And if we can all play a part, then we will get things done amazingly quickly. And I think we've shown that on a small scale over the last 18 months. PTI is all about setting up small impact groups, lighting fires, and it's all about building, you know, foundations for success that can then grow. It's you know, it's ultimately just an amazing trusted network of networks. It's like-minded people all coming together to try and help and support each other. And what we're going to talk about this morning is PTI Tech and Law for Good, which is really the backbone of that. So within the network over the last year, we've been finding all the connections, the resources, and where required, we've been plugging in little bits of funding. Tech and Law for Good is about bringing a much wider audience together, CIOs, CTOs, CISOs, general counsel, because they're generally, you are the people that I've worked with throughout my career. And also that you're also the group of people that I find very easy to engage with, who are also influential enough in your organizations to make things happen. You know, we'll talk a little bit about the asks and what we need. But on that note, what I'm going to do is just hand over to Sir Ken, Alyssa, for a few words, and then we'll see if we can come back to Michael shortly. Sir Ken.
Thank you, Dan, and good morning, everybody. Well, I just wanted to, if I could, move the context of PTI discussion just a little bit further forward, because since we met the last time, a few quite important things have changed in our world. And when we met last time, we were all obsessed with COVID-19, and we were talking about the impacts of lockdown and so on. And there was an undercurrent point that we were making at the time, although we were agreeing at the time, I think, which is the problem with events like COVID-19 and wars and huge existential changes is the people who lose out the most are the ones who were already losing out the most when it started. And so the issues that have brought us all together, which essentially social mobility, helping the disadvantaged to get to share in the pie and to contribute to the pie, COVID-19 actually extends that. And in my capacity as Lord Lieutenant, I've spent much of lockdown writing letters to small charities across London, thanking them for their amazing efforts. But they are amazing efforts. the amazing thing, for example, if I tell you that one of the charities is called the Pimlico Toy Library, you get the idea of the sort of people I've been writing to. But there are organisations there which were running football clubs for kids from council estates. It turned into food, cooking and distribution hubs to help elderly people who are isolated. The pivot and the milk of human kindness has been truly overwhelming. It is absolutely wonderful. A lot of focus on the NHS nationally, and rightly so, but the unsung heroes are those in those small charities at the community level. And I think what COVID has done to remind us all in this country is the power of our community and how much bonding with each other matters. And again, I speak from a London perspective, but I see Muslim curry restaurants who've started turning out 500 hot meals a day for people stuck at home, etc., etc. They're not doing it for Muslims, they're doing it for people in the community. So I think what we've done is we've rediscovered the power of good people working to support each other in a way that we desperately needed to, because Brexit was busy driving us apart. So the letters that I write, I start them all by saying, historians are going to have a problem explaining this period, how we could, in a week, pivot from division of Brexit into cohesion of COVID-19. So that was really the theme, the backdrop perhaps of our when we met last time. But since we met last time, another enormous existential effect has happened, and that's the Black Lives Matter movement. And the Black Lives Matter movement has been around for some time. It's not a brand new organization. The current wave of global outrage was triggered by the murder, let's call it what it was, of George Floyd in Minneapolis. But in the UK, Black Lives Matter hasn't gone the way that it would have gone, I would argue, pre-COVID. It hasn't gone into violence on the streets. It hasn't gone into outrageous behavior. It's gone into a sense of sadness and need to change. And I think we're now, the mood in our country is in a very different place than it has been for a long time. There's a thoughtfulness about things, and there's an urgency to change. So my summary of Black Lives Matter, and I've become a bit of let me just put it simply, an establishment Black Lives Matter magnet. So people write to me about all kinds of issues now about Black Lives Matter, and my message to everybody is the same. First of all, in society, all lives matter and inclusion is key. And if we found a group that have been particularly excluded, we need to deal with it because that's a priority, but we shouldn't do that at the expense of all the other groups. All lives matter, inclusion doesn't go away because of the issues in America. And by the way, America is not the UK, and that's another rant for another time, but quite an important one. Our history, etc., is not the same. But much more importantly, I think, what Black Lives Matter is showing in the UK is how people are, for the first time, really thinking about the issue, as opposed to saying, yeah, that's CSR, so push it over there, that's HR, push it over there, bit of virtue signaling, and so on. And I think the reaction is astonishing. Actually, I think there's an overreaction as opposed to a good reaction, but I don't mind. I'll bag the overreaction if it moves social change in the right direction. What I'm saying in my business life is that bringing people in, inclusion, is a matter of competitive advantage. And I've said this before, it was probably on the video when it died that we were talking about earlier on. But if you have an organization which empathizes with its customers, its supply chain, its regulators, its recruitment pool, etc., its communities, if it empathizes with them, it will clearly, axiomatically fare better than companies that don't empathize with those people. You don't understand your customers, your supply chain, you must be at a disadvantage to the people who do. Therefore, it makes tons of sense that within any organization, you have people across the board who represent those lived experiences. So my message to business is competitive advantage, my message to society is social justice. And what Dan's conceived with PTI is a brilliant marriage of those two things. Because he is saying, let's bring lots and lots of people in business together who care about the human condition and improving the social standing of everybody who deserves it. But let's do it in a way that makes commercial sense to those organizations. So it's not donating something to somebody, it's doing something better, more effectively for bigger impact. So I think what we've got with PTI is a vanguard movement on combining those two amazingly powerful human forces together, the power of community, people coming together to help each other, particularly the disadvantaged, and the power of competitive advantage, capitalism, wealth creation, and so on, which has created the freedoms in the world that we take for granted. So I look, I mean, like Dan, I'm amazed at what Dan has achieved, not because of Dan the man, but just because so many people have tried to do things like this so many times in my lifetime and have not succeeded. And Dan, you've built up this remarkable organization, Head of Steam. You've tapped into a deep well of goodwill and of willingness to make a difference. So I say to everybody on the call today, we were in a pretty good place when we met the last time because there were lots of things that we needed to do. But we had a very much what I would call a yesterday, last year perspective. We were trying to deal with the issues at the speed at which they could be dealt with of a year ago. I think now the issues haven't changed, but the speed has increased. And we need to seize the opportunity that comes from that greater speed. Dan, back to you.
Thank you, Sir Ken. And trust me, nobody is more surprised about what's going on than I. I think...
Dan, you'll be pleased to hear I'm back, but I've turned my video off.
Good. Okay, good.
Hopefully it'll give us a better connection. Can you hear me clearly?
I can. So we'll pass.
Great stuff. Okay. Well, just in case you got lost on the agenda, we're now. Okay, and we're back at agenda item 3. Still got a very dicey internet connection. Please yell at me or something if I sort of disappear. Anyway, what I'd like to do first, if I may, is just to talk a little bit about the National Tech and Law for Good Board. We had our first meeting on May the 21st, and in future we'll be holding those on a quarterly basis. Just to kind of remind everybody what our board objectives were, there were really 3 in all. The first one was to challenge and constructively support the central PTI team on matters of PTI projects. And those of you who are school governors will recognize that, that phraseology very clearly. Secondly, of course, to advise and approve new PTI projects. More importantly, ensuring, of course, that we got both the funding and the resources available to make those into really successful projects. Thirdly, and very much one for all of us to be active on, is to introduce both our own organizations and those of our own personal networks to really embrace those wonderful PTI aspirations, and of course to do what we all want to do, which is to give deserving people a really good leg up in life and ultimately make the world a better and a more equal place. In the list of who the board members are, just to sort of quickly skim through some of them, they include top global CIOs from banks, charities, global brands like Unilever, Coca-Cola, and so on. And from the legal general counsels, we have a range from global media agencies, very famous ones, to 2 of the big 4 management consultancies. We've got CEOs and founders of charities and third sector organizations and media agencies. Together with, I kind of like to refer to them as representatives of the probation service, the military services, recruiters, and indeed including a top national IT QC. I hate to say this, Dan, but only you could ever have brought together a team like this. And I hasten to add, all absolutely delightful, very special people to be volunteering alongside. So, what were some of the outcomes of that board meeting? As you can imagine, as a first board meeting, it was quite lively, and I was very pleased with what did come out. First of all, there was a need for some really good cracking PTI project stories to help and facilitate those introductions to our companies and networks. There was a recommendation that we form a simple, small set of slides to get our PTI messages across. And I was delighted that somebody leapt forward and said, hang on, we need a messaging workshop on this in order that we get our messages right and we don't miss any tricks. So that's actually going ahead and happening almost as I speak now. We talked about the development of a platform to enable the, the scaling and the collaboration to identify potential talent with employers, etc. That's all underway now as well. We had some healthy discussion topics, quite a range of those, really. Obviously, we were all concerned about finding new ways and different ways of increasing social mobility. We talked about getting more recruiters to veterans and returning citizens. That we talked about a real concern on the take-up of apprenticeships, and more particularly at the moment, about a number of companies which are very sadly cutting the investment in those apprenticeships. And that, again, is a very important area for us in PTI. And we talked about our concerns on the importance of collaboration rather than competition between charities. I don't know about you, but it's one of the biggest frustrations of my life is seeing wonderful organizations competing against each other instead of what we're doing in PTI, getting together and making more things happen more quickly and more effectively. Now, with a team of lawyers on board, as you probably would expect, we discussed issues of governance. We talked about conflicts of interest and non-disclosure at the end, that we were going to have a truly professional organization which was carefully controlled and doing the right. Oh no, my sign keeps coming up, the internet connection. Can you hear me, Ben?
Yeah, we can keep going.
Yeah.
For the time being, yeah.
I'll keep going. We obviously discussed our future meetings, the structure of the board, the agenda items that we might have in the future and the timings. But perhaps above all, that really incredible importance of forming regional tech and law groups so that we can really reach out to our local communities and our vendors. So what as a group do we need to do now to really make positive transformation happen in the real world? Well, I know Dan's, I'm sure when I was offline, already mentioned document that he added to our agendas. Was with, yeah, can you hear me?
We can. If I'll try, just go to what we're doing next in the regional groups. If it breaks again, I'll just take over. In fact, I'll take over, Michael. Don't worry.
Okay. Yeah, I'm really sorry, guys. I don't know what's happened.
Not a problem. So, thank you for the update on the actual board meeting, Michael. I think, look, going forward, it's very simple. The idea of this is to keep everything as light touch as possible. And as I said, it's all about collaboration. So really all we need to do now to start implementing what we've already done in concept at scale is to form regional groups. So if after this call, the ideal scenario would be, I think we've got about half of the people that were able to jump on this call. I'm recording it for the half that I'll send to after this. So we've got about 130, 140 people, organisations represented across the country. There is a chunk of that is in London, but it's important to make sure that we do this regionally. So the very first thing will be is after this call, if I can ask for people to get in contact, or I will get in contact with you, I need to start looking at who can help us form individual regional groups. Now they can be anywhere around the UK. We just need to make sure that we've got a good geographical spread. Now, the idea of those groups, again, to try and keep it very simple, we have a team of people that is able to do the heavy lifting, so to speak. And in the sort of early stages, so between now and the end of the year, all we really need to do is make sure we have the regional groups in place. We then need to, from September onwards, we need to convene similar meetings to this, but sort of with each regional group. And those meetings will really be about, again, very simply, will just be about looking at who do you know within your peer network that would be interested in the concept of PTI? And who are your key technology vendors that you work with on a regular basis? They're really the two things that we need to do. So form regional groups, then we're going to set up some regional meetings in September, and then within those meetings, it's really to identify people that you can bring to those groups at your level, and who the tech vendors are that you work with on a day-to-day basis. And that's it for the time being. That's really where we need to go. And from that, when we have those meetings, we'll then be able to explain and demonstrate how what we've already done can be achieved on a much bigger scale, working with you within those groups. So that's it for the time being. We don't need to make it overly complicated. Before I finish and I'll open up to some questions, I do want to just give what I think is a really good example. And I did speak about this on a little video the other morning. We can all focus, this is a big plan to do this. We've already started working with a group in South Africa, and we're already getting interest from setting up these groups in other locations around the world. It is a big plan. There are many moving parts, but I think sometimes we can start to forget about how these big things are achieved just through small actions that make a big difference. And PTI is about, as Sir Ken said, it's about including everyone. It's about everyone matters, me, you, Sir Ken, everybody. But it's how do we make this sort of substantial change by starting with these small impact groups, regional groups. Let's all do small things and affect big change. And a good example of that is a lady called Sylvia White, who's been working with PTI right from the start. She's very good at helping structure me and help create our governance and compliance. But we've been working with a small charity that's really been designed to help children and their parents, and it's all about safeguarding. And it's an amazing inspirational project, and it's got buy-in from the DFE and the Met Police, and there's so many amazing things that can be achieved with it. But Sharon, the lady who runs it, Sharon Doherty, has been on a very challenging journey. And if this represents someone who needed a hand up and needed support so that we could help other people. Now, people have been offering in PTI pro bono legal support, coming in as advisory CEOs. It's been an amazing thing, but we still needed a very short-term funding solution. Now, PTI is in the process of, with you guys as well, putting together a program that's going to be able to create a fund, but we're going to do it in a very different way. But in the meantime, we just needed a short-term solution. And this is what I mean by having people that are amazing and working in a trusted network of trusted, motivated people. Sylvia just decided off her own back she was going to get up and go and walk a marathon. Now, it's in my mind, you could say it's a small thing. I think it's a very big thing to be able to just say, in support of someone else who's trying to support young children, safeguarding, supporting families all around this country. We just need that small amount of money to be able to tip this massive project over the line. And for somebody just to get up off their own back and do that, I think is incredible. And I think it's very representative of everyone just helping each other and finding even the little things we can do to support wider society. So that's that was an example. I just want to draw to Martin Smith, who I know is on the call. Martin's another good example. He runs an incredible network of Chief Information Security Officers. Martin has been working with us to help PTI engage with his network, which is pretty much what we're asking the people on this call to do. Martin has set up an opportunity for us to do a video call with a lot of the people on his network. And Martin himself and his network are incredibly supportive of other people. So tomorrow at 11 a.m., they're doing a well-being session for people, just to support and aid people through challenges now, but also to give people a hand up in the future. So just a couple of examples of in my mind, I think we're going for the big challenges, but we need to deal with the small things as well. So I'm very happy if people want to throw in some questions now. If anyone's got a question, we'll see how it goes. So anyone for a question? Stephen. You're on mute, Stephen.
Yes, I'm off now. Sorry about that. The introduction that Ken gave us earlier, I thought was just fantastic. And I wonder if there's any way that can be bottled and used in other contexts, because that's summing up of exactly where we are around Black Lives Matter and the whole current process. I think would work as an introduction to the kind of stuff we're all trying to do in many ways. So the question is, how can we bottle that? That's my first question. Second question, not far from that, is I've got 2 projects in the course of development in London, which again, Ken has helped with. One is trying to do something about knife crime and gangs in Haringey, and that is largely about engaging people from the technology sector to go into schools, clubs, and all the other places, saying there is a real potential for you, young person, in our industry, don't give up. And the other one is another London one, I'm afraid, which is about trying to get the employer world really serious about training, supporting, and eventually recruiting children coming out of local authority care. So 2 questions. Well, one about the message which we got, and the second is about how we take forward into the network something of the sort I'm asking about.
Stephen, could you just, and I should say this for everyone else, just could you just say a little bit quickly about who you are as well? Just do a quick intro so people know.
Oh, I'm thoroughly mixed up. I've spent my last 25 years in trying to mobilize the private sector into things it didn't know it wanted to do. So I started business in the community in London first, and I was the first chairman of Cheech first and all that. Now a new network called Second Curve, which is absolutely not an organization, based on Charles Handy's book, which says, before your career or your organization is in decline, create the next one. And that's my kind of way of talking about or getting into corporate responsibility, which I happen to think has been very over delegated inside large firms. So what we have now is a network, which I hope is going to take on these projects, and another one, which I want to talk to Martin about sometime, outside London in Yorkshire. And that's the best I can do.
No, thank you, Stephen. So I think it's 2 good points. So in regards to bottling Seken, if Seken is open to being bottled, and I mean that in the non-Essex sense, then we shall arrange to have Seken do that introduction on video, and then we can send that around. So we'll be able to do that. I really like your second question and point, Stephen, because I think it just speaks to everything that we're doing, which is, and as you know, because Barry Murphy introduced us, everything is about put an impact group around it. That's my answer to everything, right? So there is a problem, put an impact group around it. And what I mean by an impact group is find a couple of key people. I'm seeing this work every single day. We find a project or a problem. We find a couple of key people that are motivated. We get together, we work out who we need, so connections. We work out what resources we need. And what I've seen so far in all the groups that I'm working in with PTI is if we get the right people, the resources seem to flow out of that. We're all well connected. We can all find pro bono resources if we put our mind to it. And ultimately then, once we've built that solution with an impact group to a certain point, then it needs money. Then we will, through the PTI process, go out and establish where we can get the funding. And that's the answer to, hopefully, to that. And we do that as many times as possible, in as many places as possible. Does that help? Is that helpful?
Yeah, it's very helpful. And is there a particular format you've come up with for that, so that you know how you want to receive things?
There is, and what I'll do is we've got in terms of the groups, I'll share that afterwards. It's trying to keep that as open as possible. When it comes to the actual funding, one of the biggest problems with charities, well, many, but ultimately is this requirement they have to fill in, like documents like this for funding. So we're trying to make the process as simple as possible. We've got a very small template. Just to give you an insight, what it does is it says, what have you done? What do you need? Who's involved? Give us some KPIs. But importantly, before you ask for money, because we're not a bank and we're not a charity and we're not going to become a central point for handouts, what we want to do is to say, please demonstrate to us how you've used your connections, how your connections have used their resources, and at that point, there's a number, and then we will work with you to go out and secure that number. Is that helpful? Wonderful. Do we have any other questions? Otherwise, I can defer.
I've got a couple, Dan.
Yeah, go for it, Kane. Do you want to introduce yourself first?
Oh, hi. Yeah, so I'm Kane. I'm CEO and co-founder of Red Badger, which is a digital consultancy. We're partnering kind of with PTI to try and help on the digital side of things with regard to having social impact. So, we do a lot of work in this space. Yeah, so I've got a couple of questions. With regards to the problems, is there sort of specific problem domains that we're focused on, or and if not, how do we kind of filter and prioritize the ideas that come in? Do we literally set up a impact group for every single type of problem, or is there like a more smaller subset that we're looking to sort of focus on? And then my second question is, who are the kind of actors that we are looking to engage in the impact groups themselves? Do we want to bring private sector and sort of, academia and charities and third sector all together? And what about other companies like Red Badger that are digital consultancies that might have bench that can provide digital resource and things like that? Those are my two questions.
No, great, thank you, Kane. I just while you're there, Kane, as well, I just want to say, in the proof of concept phase for PTI, it was really, the last year has been quite demanding in making sure that we can deliver on the sort of pledge projects, and Red Badger have been really very instrumental in stepping in to support the Employers Social Mobility Alliance, which is one of the projects that PTI is supporting. So thank you for that, Kane. And I'm actually going to use you as an example, if I may. So,
sure.
so stay unmuted, because I may throw this back at you as well. So in terms of the groups, I think it's a really good example. So Kane and I met. Red Badger have an amazing team who do some brilliant things, and they also created a social impact framework called Mission Beyond. Now, Mission Beyond is aligned to the global sustainability goals, and their people and the mindset that I talked about at the start, about this being a mindset and a culture, we're so aligned that it made sense for us to get together. Now, out of that process, to talk about your first question, so the groups themselves, Kane's organisation developed a platform called Share Time, which was all about human connection. And it was about having older people teach younger people how to cook. And it's a platform that we want to develop, and we want to make it available to other people and other ideas. So we created a group. That's the point. We created a group called Facilitating Human Connection. And the implementation of that was we asked a few people that I knew or Kane knew to come into that group. And to your point about who should be in that group, I think initially it's very key to find stakeholders that are already part of the conversation. So in this case, we had 3 or 4 people on my side and on Red Badger's side. And we said, right, who on your team or who in our PTI network do we know are going to be really motivated and inspired by this? So then we bring that small group together. Now, this may seem slightly unstructured, but in many ways, that's the point. This cross-organisational collaboration, those groups are becoming very successful because that small group of people are given the autonomy and the freedom to think outside the building and think outside the box. You know, what do we need? You know, ultimately, PTI can provide you an infinite resource pool because it's not PTI providing it. It's all the organisations that are becoming part of this. So that, in terms of the group, what happened then was we set the group up, it developed, it created a program that's that's becoming incredibly effective, but it has also splintered out into 2 or 3 other groups, which are then being driven by the people that were in the first group. And those groups then start to affect the other groups. So it's just a process of sort of exponential development. In terms of the very first question you asked about where should we focus, PTI decided originally that we need to have pledges. So we can have as many projects as we like because we have an infinite pool of motivated people that want to service them. But we need to focus on either creating something new, and our concept project for that was we created a new apprenticeship standard to help people into employment. We either need to accelerate existing programs, so identify projects like Share Time with Red Badger, that just need connections, resourcing, funding to widen their impact. So create, accelerate, or collaborate, which is the Employer Social Mobility Alliance that I mentioned, which was a collaboration between PTI, Red Badger, Barry Matthews, Barry Murphy at PwC, and those things have now sprung out into lots of other different impact groups. So does that give you what you need, Kane? Do you think that explains it properly, or do you want to add anything to that?
No, that's good. That's good. So I suppose the follow-up question is if a person has a problem space that they would like PTI's help to like form a group to sort of start to impact that area, do they just come to you? Is that kind of, and then you will go out to the network to form a group? Is that kind of the process that you'd like to follow?
So I don't want to be a bottleneck, and if we're going to do this as we do this at scale, obviously this is something we've looked at. So that has been the process, and just for the time being, we'll maintain that. So if you email me, then I can start to manage that. What we're going to do in the very near future, and we've started this, is we're going to position what we call impact directors. Now, I believe that there is a use for CRM systems and technology, but not here. This is all about human connection. Pick up the phone, go and see someone, talk to someone. But we also know that has to be centralized. So what we're going to do is to create, in each group, as they develop, we'll ask each group to nominate an impact director. Those people will get together, probably monthly, whether that's 10 of them or 10,000 of them. We'll get together on a monthly basis or whatever that may be, so that we can communicate as human beings what's happening within these groups, what needs to be cross-fertilized into other groups. Now, if it gets exponentially large, obviously we can then look at how we substructure that process, and we can lay in some technology so that we can monitor the results and of the conversations. But that's, for the time being, contact me, and as soon as we have the impact directors in place, then we will start to make those available and make those connections. Stuff.
Sounds great.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to chip in while we're on the call? Good. Okay. I'll just like to... Yes. Hello, Martin.
You did ask. I've just sent a note to everyone. Also on Monday, we're doing a rerun of the last meeting we all had together, where you and Sir Ken and everyone else is going to be explaining to the SASIC community what this is all about. And anybody and everybody's welcome to join us if you wish. If you think this would be a good opportunity for you to explain to your own communities, it's a rerun of the last meeting.
Brilliant. Could you talk a little bit about the Wellbeing Forum as well tomorrow? Because I think that's incredibly important at the moment as well.
Yeah, that just bubbled up. We had people, including myself, who had bad days. And we have a number of people in our community who are mental health first aiders. And they just said, well, let's have a session on it and see what we can do. And we now do one every 2 weeks. And we're finding it, of all our various topics, it's the one that we're increasing numbers. And tomorrow we're just talking about all the various techniques like mindfulness and yoga and stuff like that, and meditation. And I thought the hard-nosed security world would poo-poo this, but far from it. Everyone is very keen to learn more. And I don't know about everybody else that comes along, but I'm finding it really useful. And again, if anybody wants to join in tomorrow, the SASIG webinars are open to anybody and everybody. You don't have to be part of the SASIG community. And that's both, yeah, I'm finding it really useful. And I know, Dan, you know, we've talked about this. It doesn't matter how any one of us is struggling at the moment. All of us are struggling in our various ways. And there's a lot of people in my community who are not coping as well as they like to make out. Yeah. And one of the things we're going to talk about tomorrow, then I'm going to shut up, is that, you know, everybody is dealing with it at the moment, because how can you go sick if you're at home already? But as we start to get back into the swing of things, my experts that talk to me about this are saying that they're predicting an upsurge in illnesses, which aren't really illnesses. They're many manifestations of the anxieties and the stresses that we've all been burying. And I think there's a real issue coming as we start to come out of lockdown, of people who so far have looked like they're dealing with it, but actually probably aren't. And going back to work in whatever form that will take, we'll start to show that coming through. I hope that makes sense.
No, thank you, Martin. David Ivell, I'm going to come to you in 1 second. I think, you know, that what Martin's saying is representative of everything that the PTI is about. Just, you know, we all have great networks. They don't have to be big and international. We all know people that are like-minded, caring, motivated, empathetic, who want to do things and want to help other people. I keep making this point. I'm sorry if it becomes boring, but there's a video by Admiral William McRaven. Great film, commencement speech at Texas University. But ultimately, his point being, he was a Navy SEAL, amazing guy. But his point being, if you just go out and help 10 people, it doesn't matter who they are. If you can make a difference to 10 people, and those 10 people help 10 people, and 10 people help 10 people, you don't have to be a genius to realise that you can positively impact the lives of millions, tens of millions, billions of people over a number of generations. So it's something to focus on. David, do you want to?
Yeah, thanks, Dan. Brilliant to see so many people here. It's really quite amazing. So thanks for inviting. But just referring back to the opening statements, really, and if anyone is forming a group to look at how we help those young people, particularly from disadvantaged backgrounds, get into apprenticeships, then it was really just please include me. We're doing stuff in that area and would love to be involved if there's anybody working on that particular problem.
David, can you hear me okay? Because I've got a big sign on my screen saying my speaker's not working.
There's a little bit of feedback, but we can hear you. Okay.
I will put you in contact with the group that has created the new apprenticeship standard. Because there's a whole piece of work that's going on there that I think would be really great. So I'll do that after the call.
Brilliant.
I'll send everyone a note, just very short, that says these are the key points, and here's a list of some of the existing projects if you want to be involved. And before we close out, just a final word about something that's happening next week. I read a book recently by an amazing lady called Rosabeth Moss-Kanter. And she's part of the Harvard Advanced Leadership Institute. And Kane Uller, who you heard from, introduced me, a guy called Reese on the call, sent me something that made me aware. Kane's very aware of Rosabeth. But she is one of the world's foremost global thinkers. She's in the top 50 most powerful women in the world. And so when I read her book, in true Dan Brown style, I rang her up, stalked her for a couple of weeks, harassed her office, and yesterday she agreed to do a talk for us next week. So it's a bit short notice, but we'll fit in. So she is the absolute foremost thinker on what we are trying to achieve, which is think outside the building. It's no boundaries, no ego collaboration for positive transformation. So I'll include a link to that. You're all very welcome to join. It'll be an amazing talk, and we'll be able to Q&A it as well. So it's amazing to have access to Rosabeth next week. So on that note, thank you everyone. It's been a real pleasure, and I hope that we can build this and grow it. And I hope you'll talk to other people about it. And I look forward to speaking to everyone again soon. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks, everyone.
Dan, thanks, everyone.
Thank you.